Hello and welcome back to another season of M&A TV. Now, if you've never watched M&A TV before, let me tell you a bit about it. We like to think of it as a paranormal lifestyle show where we talk about various subjects of the paranormal. Everything from technology and gadget reviews to traditional methods of divination and everything in between. Tonight we've got a cracker of an episode for you. Brian from the Paranormal Detectives shares with us his scariest paranormal experiences. There's a mini investigation at Otis Chapel, and I will be taking you through the history of Nunney's Castle. But first, the M&A news.
Hello and welcome to M&A News. So recently you will have noticed we went on a bit of a paranormal adventure, and we did a road trip vlog, which if you haven't caught it yet, you will be able to find a link in the description of this video to go and give that a watch, and it certainly was a lot of fun. So on our adventures we featured quite a few locations that we went to, and we will be making some new M&A TV episodes with the footage that we got at these locations, including the Ancient Ram Inn, Knowlton Church and a few others. So keep an eye on the upcoming episodes, which will be featured on Mondays and Thursdays at around 8 PM, and you will find that we will post on the M&A Facebook page when those are up and coming, so you'll be able to track on there along with any other social media sites that we are on, such as TikTok and Instagram. So keep following, keep liking, keep sharing and keep up to date with the news. So the first episode that we've got coming up is going to be our investigation at Knowlton Church in Dorset, where we were joined by John Jeffries from ESN Paranormal and a few of his other members. This will be airing on Monday at 8 PM, so please stay tuned. And some of you might be wanting to watch out for our adventures at the Ancient Ram Inn in Gloucestershire. This will be coming up just around Halloween, so it's something to really look forward to. And then, if that wasn't enough excitement for you, you may have caught that Shell had a little live chit chat, and we will be considering making this a regular thing. If there's anything else that you'd like to see us doing quite regularly, please let us know in the comments. Love and light.
One thing that's often said to us as paranormal investigators is that we must be really brave to go in all the haunted, creepy locations that we go in. And while that is mostly true, very occasionally we do get scared too. So I thought to myself, let's find out when our fellow paranormal investigators have been scared during an investigation or at a location. So I thought, who to start with? And our good friend Brian over at the Paranormal Detectives agreed to be my first guinea pig for this little segment on M&A TV, and he sent us a little video telling us about when he was last scared during a paranormal investigation. Also, I'd like to say, before we get into Brian's little video, if any of you guys watching would like to take part in this little segment, just let me know, hit me up, send me a message and we'll sort it out. But I think it's really good and interesting to share everyone's experiences with each other, and perhaps you might get some of the M&A team's experiences in a future episode. So stay tuned and I hope you enjoy Brian's story.
Right guys, it's Brian here from the Paranormal Detectives. I've been asked by M&A Paranormal to just share a few scary stories that have happened whilst I've been out investigating, and some of the scariest experiences I've had so far whilst I've been doing paranormal investigation. So a couple immediately sprang to mind, and that would be, obviously all these stories are with myself and Nathan as part of the Paranormal Detectives investigating. The very first one which sprang to mind would have been our time at the Cage, so one of the very first scary sort of big locations that we did, one of the most well-known locations we did. For me, that one, there was a lot of unusual things that happened which weren't explainable, and I would say that that location itself, although we had been to a few locations before, it was the first location that kind of had some mainstream fame at the time, and one of the most haunted houses in the UK. It's no longer accessible, unfortunately, but it is, or it was, a former witches' prison. Now I believe it is residential only. But we were lucky enough to get an opportunity in there to investigate, and the first time where we went in there was such a heavy sort of atmosphere in the building as soon as we walked in. I remember Vanessa trying to actually access the building and trying to get in there, and there was such a problem trying to get the door open, and when she finally opened the door, there was such a heavy sort of atmosphere. It felt very overpowering, and it was very evident we were the first ones in there for a long time. So I think that kind of psychologically played on my mind a little bit, thinking not many people come here. It's obviously an abandoned sort of house in terms of she no longer lives there. She actually moved out due to the activity that was happening and decided to live elsewhere. For me, that gives it some credibility and a little bit of fear, really, which, you know, when we weren't used to going to these sort of big locations, it was quite unnerving and unsettling. And within the first moments, I mean, apart from feeling that feeling, we'd set up all the cameras and got them all recording, and just before we were about to film the actual main investigation, on one of the locked off cameras themselves, it actually captures a toy going off on its own, so a child's toy, which I believe is one of the reported activities that used to happen. So to actually capture that going off on camera was absolutely crazy. But as well as that, there was a few other things that happened, including, I believe Nathan had a really sort of nasty, deep-looking scratch that appeared on his arm out of nowhere. So that wasn't very nice. And also, I do remember every time we would ask questions for EVPs, for example, if there was anybody there, give us a sign. Every time we'd ask a question such as that, we would get a response, but it wouldn't be a response in terms of an EVP or anything like that. It was actually a response in terms of a nasty smell that came out of nowhere, which we haven't really had before in terms of, you know, like call and response, if you like. We have had sort of weird smells noticed at other locations, but not very often. It's something we haven't noticed too often. Whereas at the Cage, it was kind of on demand. So every time we said, give us a sign, we would smell this horrible smell which I've never smelt since, and it kind of made me feel unnerved, as if, you know, it was something perhaps demonic, I don't know, something very negative producing that smell and basically giving us a reaction. I also do remember there was a time in there towards the end of the evening where I think we had a problem with one of the cameras and it wasn't quite filming, and we went to readjust the camera. And just as Nathan was about to sit down, the door handle on the room actually depressed and went down, and then was let go, and it basically sprung back up and made a noise. Now that, you can hear it very loudly on the video footage it was recording. That made us jump because we were the only two people in the house. I don't know what would have caused a door handle to move up and down. The handle moving itself wasn't caught on camera, but the noise is, and you can see our reaction and the pure fear on our faces. So obviously go check that episode out if you haven't seen it. I think you'd be quite impressed with the activity that we did catch. Obviously as well, we did have things swinging on the walls as well, in terms of, I think there were sort of certain artifacts that were like ornaments swinging on the walls at one point, and that was on a locked off camera that was caught. So quite a bit of good activity there, and I would say that location was the start of possibly the scariest location we had been to. But then a few investigations later, we visited the Ancient Ram Inn, which is actually one of the places where I was dreading to go. It's always on the top of my wish list, but the Ancient Ram Inn was somewhere of my nightmares, basically. And that was due to all the stories that we'd heard about the place and all of the history that happened there. Now, with the ancient ram in, it was just us two yet again. And when we first got in there, again, you had this atmosphere, this really overwhelming atmosphere. And it felt thick and very overpowering. And it felt like you were being watched the entire time. But again, you know, could that have been psychological of being in this sort of building when it's just you two? You know, that could do that to you. But very strange things again started to happen. So basically we ran a vote at the time where the public and the people that watch our channel could have voted for either myself or Nathan to do a lone vigil in the ancient ram inn. Now, the fact of the matter was that at the time we did that vote, Nathan was actually trying to get people actively to vote for me and trying to rig the vote, essentially, which I then caught wind of, basically, and I outed him as such. We were due to go on a radio show, and when we went on, I basically told the hosts what was going on. And as a result, what they did do was they announced live on their show, basically, that he was trying to rig the vote and tried to get people to vote for him in return, which is what happened. And he ended up losing the vote, so he ended up doing a lone vigil around the ram while I just sat and remotely watched it. And when he was doing that lone vigil, a lot of malfunctions were happening with the equipment and the lighting. Very strange things. But the most strangest thing of all for Nathan would have been the bishop's room. So when he goes to the bishop's room, he would have knocked on the door, as that is what John used to do. So you'd knock on the door before you enter. When Nathan knocked on the bishop's room door, the bishop's room door actually knocked back at him. So that is something which pretty much finished him off for the entire evening. As you can imagine, he was quite petrified at that point, as anyone would be. But the scariest thing for me at the ram at that point is we were quite excited by that live stream. It's the first live stream we'd really done. And before we wanted to start investigating, we decided to sit down in John's old area to re-watch the footage back. And that's exactly what we were doing. We were just taking a bit of a 5-minute rester before we started investigating properly to watch the live stream back. And we started watching this footage, and all of a sudden we can hear movement, and we can hear what sounds like shuffling and footsteps coming from the upstairs areas. Obviously it is just us two in the house, so we kind of ignore it, but kind of listen in. And we can hear these footsteps getting louder, so we turn the live stream off and we just listen. And we can hear these footsteps coming more and more towards us, basically. And it was coming from the upstairs, coming all the way down the stairs, and then across from where we were sat, there's a bit of a corridor which leads into the barn area. And that is exactly where the footsteps were coming from. And they started coming towards the alleyway towards us. But it kind of also sounded like they were being accompanied by the sound of heavy dragging, like chains, for example. I'm not sure if it was chains, but something of that nature, which accompanied the footsteps. So very strange, and I'm not really sure what would have caused that. But at that point, that did make us jump. You know, when you're hearing something to that nature, you expect to see something, and when there's nothing there and that sound is coming towards you and it's crystal clear, yeah, it's enough to scare anyone. So at that point, that did unnerve us, and we did have a 5-minute break outside after that because we had to just sort of regather our thoughts to what was going on. We weren't really prepared for it, to be honest, and it really took us off guard. So that would have been my scariest experience out investigating since we've done this channel. Now, in one of our most recent videos, St Mary's Church in Tintern, we did a 2-part episode because the weather was quite bad in part 1. So in part 2, we went back to figure out the rest of the investigation, and what we decided to do was do a split up. Basically, I did a solo section in the graveyard, and Nathan did a solo section in the church itself. And as we were doing those sections, something happened in the graveyard which reminded me of a time. It startled me, and it reminded me of a time where me and Nathan were doing something as we were quite young and just getting into the paranormal, so long before we were doing the YouTube channel. And something happened that reminded me and took me back to that time where something really unnerved me. And I do say in that video that I was about to create, or I will create a video explaining that story. I'm yet to do that as it stands as of now, but I am going to be working on that story very shortly. So if you would like to hear that story and know all about what used to happen and what did happen after that experience, when I think we were 19, so we were quite young. It's a story that I will never forget, and a day that I'll never forget as well. And that story will always basically be held up here. It's one of those things which, I mean, we were very young and maybe some of the things were explainable, but it's a story I've never forgotten. And it's one of the scariest nights I've ever had in my life, because I felt personally quite attacked by what happened, or personally quite vulnerable. So I'm going to retell that story for anybody that wants to hear that one. I would like to share it with you, but I've gave you 2 already on this one, and I don't want to take any more of M&A TV up at the moment. So obviously, if you would like to hear that other story, then please head on over to our channel. That video will be coming soon. And I just also want to say a massive thank you to the team at M&A for allowing me to record a video and share these stories with you as well. So great job with M&A TV, guys. Keep it up. I absolutely love M&A TV. And yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to share this video with you. And yeah, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Welcome to a short investigation at Oda's Chapel. We've just taken a quick stop off here on our road trip.
So we've been going around with the EMF detector, and it has lit up a couple of times.
Yeah.
So anyone with us now, step forward and light up this device in my hand.
Oh, hello.
Are you a male spirit? Oh, did you hear that? Like a click behind us.
I heard a clicking. Sounds as if it was coming from kind of the outside of the building, that side.
Oh.
Chris is too far away for that to be his camp, right?
Yeah.
Home setting that off, isn't it?
Yeah.
Went all the way up to the red light.
No, for it to be set off, it either has to be right next to it, or the signal I'm getting is so strong.
But you've not had anything come through on your phone at that point?
No. So I would have to be downloading. I mean, I've had
because we did.
Oh, it's going again.
Hang on.
Shall I ask if there was anyone here, and it went off pretty immediately.
I'll put mine on airplane mode.
Yeah.
So still going off then. If you're a male spirit, can you confirm and step towards the device? Light it up for me.
Thank you. And there's dogs barking outside as well at the same time.
I'll pass that to you.
Okay. Alright. Are you attached to this chapel somehow?
Did you want to live here? Or work here?
Or was this your place of worship?
Oh. Place of worship is a very strong signal then. It's gone right up to red, it's staying on red.
Yeah, that's really staying on strong, because if that was just like a signal coming through to something, it would just be a short blip.
Is your phone on airplane mode?
Yeah, all phones are on airplane.
Yeah. Plus you'd hear my phone if it went off.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I take it your beliefs were quite strong considering the strength of your answer.
That flashed again then, just once as I panned away.
Yeah, that went to red again. I take it you have quite a lot of energy to be able to get all the way to the red light with ease.
I feel a bit tight-chested all of a sudden. Do you feel that?
I feel quite sort of heady,
like
a little bit dizzy.
Yeah. Like as if it's all of a sudden a little bit hard to breathe. Did you have any breathing issues? Is that how you died?
Yeah, it's gone to the orange.
What's
It's
that?
going all the way to the orange light.
I just said which came from in here.
I can hear talking, but I don't know if that's from outside.
There's a lot of walkers going by.
Talking was from outside.
I had a flash then.
We are getting...
Well, we had a tapping sound here.
Yeah.
At the side of us.
It was quite clear that it was that part of the building.
If that's you, can you make another tapping sound or make another sound?
And I think it's agreeing to doing the...
Should we give it... No, because the walls are three
stones thick.
Three stones thick.
Yeah.
Wouldn't travel. Says on the sign over there, we had a little read.
Why don't you take a seat in one of the pews for us? Surely it will creak, letting us know where you are.
What was that beep?
I'm wondering about trying the digital voice recorder, see if we get anything, because we had a couple of audible sounds. I don't know if the camera will have picked them up.
Because whoever's with us is quite strong to be able to get it to the red light with a barely any effort in daylight as well.
What were you going to say, Chris?
Well, I literally just asked it to sit on our chair to see if it will creak, see if it gives an idea of where it is, but I can't hear anything.
Does anyone else feel a cold spot in front of me and Shell?
I feel a cold spot.
Yeah, so really.
In fact, I feel it more around me. Yeah. Step to the side of me. Oh no, between us.
It's kind of moving round now.
No? Oh.
Might be kind of curious about us and trying to watch us.
Okay, if you want to use the device in my hand to talk to us. Can the really strong spirit that was making the EMF detector go really high? Can you come and say hi and tell us who you are? Say hi and tell us who you are.
Speaking of footsteps outside, I don't know whose footsteps these are. I'm just going to see
But I thought there was something just before Jodie started fiddling with it to turn it off. I turned it down because there's people sat in the garden next door.
Okay, listen.
Okay.
I find those footsteps really weird because that's a gravel pathway. If anyone was walking on a gravel pathway, it sounds good to them. They're kind of cleaner. Sure.
See, as he's talking, I feel like something chanting is going on behind him. And as soon as he stops speaking, the last syllable of his words is something there.
Okay, I just got really headachy from the head, like something just walked through me.
I've got a slight headache coming on as well.
Yeah, there's definitely something to
What the hell?
What?
I'm picking up on something in concrete.
When the camera blurs,
Yeah.
like something, what my vision just did that.
Okay.
I'm wearing fucking glasses.
And maybe they're on my head.
have kind of come through and come from like that way, to kind of over here. So I was wondering if what came across your vision was the same. And
Can the spirit next to the wall?
Seems a bit colder over here, actually.
there's anything there, can you stand in front of my friend by the wall? Because if I do walk across, it'll affect the focus on the camera.
No response.
Hello and welcome back to another historical adventure. Today I'm at Nunney Castle in Somerset. Now this place was built in the 14th century by John de la Mare. Now he fought in the 100 Years' War in France. He gained his licence and built this place from the profits he made from the 100 Years' War by ransoming wealthy enemies. Now, Sir John acquired this licence to crenellate from King Edward III in 1373, meaning he could now build a castle, developing a substantial new fortification on the site where his manor house was located. The castle itself consisted of a stone tower keep in the centre surrounded by 4 corner towers, complete with conical roofs, and the walls themselves having prominent machicolations which were used for castle defence. If you don't know what machicolations are, they're points in the wall which they would tip things down through the hole towards anybody at the base of the wall. Now, the main tower is a bit more of a mystery to me, with precisely how the floors of the keep were laid out, as I found more than a few different stories in different places about precisely what each floor was used for. But from what I have managed to find out, the keep contained a service area and storage, another floor contained living quarters for the owning family, and the last floor of course being the keep's hall. Now more than likely the service and storage was kept at the bottom, where all the servants would work and keep all the stuff needed for the castle. The middle floor, I would imagine, would be the living quarters for the owning family and any guests, whilst the top floor would be the main hall for the ruling lord. Fast forward to the 15th century and the castle changes hand by way of marriage and falls under the control of the Poulet family. Even though they would spend most of their time in Basing Castle in Hampshire instead of Nunney, they held the castle up until 1572, where the castle would change owners a fair bit up until 1577, when the castle would eventually end up being owned by the Prater family. Nunney Castle would go through redevelopment in the second half of the 16th century, making the windows larger to bring in more light, a grand staircase added to one of the towers, a Catholic altar was put in, and a terrace was added in around the inside of the moat. Now it's the 17th century, and the Catholic Prater family still hold Nunney Castle, but of course in 1642 the English Civil War broke out, and like many Catholics, Colonel Richard Prater supported King Charles I. As we well know, things didn't go well for the Royalists, and the southwest became one of the last remaining strongholds for the faction. Nunney Castle was then garrisoned in preparation for the enemy attack, and in 1645 Lord Fairfax and Oliver Cromwell led a parliamentary army and did just that. After conquering a few places along the way, Nunney Castle was surrounded on the 18th of September when Colonel Prater refused to surrender. Now, even though the colonel resisted the army of Parliament and the cannons that were now hitting the castle with everything they had by raising a Catholic crucifix flag to taunt them, the cannon fire had breached the castle walls, and the fighting continued until 2 days later when the garrison surrendered. The castle itself was left damaged but still in a reasonable state. For one William Whitchurch, who purchased it from the Prater family. Then in 1789, where it was meant to be used for French prisoners. However, it's thought that the prisoners didn't actually arrive. And because it was not used for what it was purchased for, by law the Prater family still owned it and have the right to ownership even now. Sadly, after the events of the Civil War, the castle fell into decline and fell into an increasingly ruined state. But fortunately, in 1926, a Robert Bailey Neal transferred ownership of Nunney Castle to the Commissioner of Works, where he started a project of restoration in an attempt to preserve this simply beautiful monument. Now it lays in the hands of English Heritage, where it is continued to be preserved on this amazing site in a beautiful town here in Somerset. It's been a real joy to see this place and experience its wonder. In just a small area, it's simply brilliant. It's been so wonderful to start my adventures again into the history of our country, and it's really wonderful to have kicked things off with Nunney Castle. It's such a small fortification, but it has so much history. I really recommend doing what I do and looking up the history of places that, you know, if you're going on a road trip like we did, you think you're going to happen some of these places, look up its history. So when you stand in it like I did, you really get a sense for just what went on there and what this castle's been through. It's been great to have you all join me again. See you next time.